Resuming debate, the Honourable Member for Davenport.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's an absolute honor for me to rise in this House to speak on behalf of the residents of my riding of Davenport. I'm speaking in support of Bill C-11, an act to enact the Consumer Privacy Protection Act and the Personal Information and Data Protection Tribunal Act, and to make consequential and related amendments to other acts. It is also known as the Digital Charter Implementation Act. Mr. Speaker, from the earliest days of my first run for office, the residents of Davenport have approached me to tell me how concerned they are about the security of their personal information. And literally, they were running after me in the streets to say to me that this is an issue of great importance to them. And I can assure you, Mr. Speaker, it's not just Davenport residents who are concerned. The Privacy Commissioner actually published a survey in 2019 that found that 92% of all Canadians are concerned about their privacy, with 37% of Canadians extremely concerned. This means that 9 out of 10 Canadians are worried about their privacy. Now, I know that the third wave of this pandemic is absolutely the most pressing issue for all of us right now, and rightly so, but it has not made our privacy concerns go away. Indeed, this pandemic has had the opposite effect, given that most, if not just about all of us, our lives, most of our lives have moved online, from work to worship to shopping to social gatherings. I'll tell you that this is a front and center sort of issue. Davenport residents are not comfortable entrusting all of their data into the black hole of the internet, managed mainly by big multinational tech giants. These companies have been operating with outdated regulations, with limited transparency. But as Canadians right now, we do have a choice. We are all used to, but as Canadians right now, we have no choice. We're all used to downloading apps or signing up for things online that come with long privacy policies and consent requests. Now, I don't know about you, Mr. Speaker, but most of us don't have time to read all of these online terms and conditions that are often in legalese and not easy to understand. And that's why I'm really happy that Bill C-11 requires plain language consent requests. We're also too used to being peppered with targeted ads and content based on the websites we visit, and with no consent or even knowledge about the algorithms that track our actions. It's absolutely impossible to keep track of how our personal data and how our online actions are being used or abused, whether it's to misinform others or maybe for even more nefarious purposes like identity theft. So that's why, Mr. Speaker, I'm really glad that Bill C-11 is before this House. It marks a huge leap forward in our privacy laws. Canada must do all it can to protect our data of all of our residents, and Canadians should know exactly how their data is used with maximum transparency. We should have the right to manage what data is kept online and what is deleted. Canada must also keep up with the rapid growth of the digital economy, as hundreds of companies and organizations are now handling our personal data. Other countries have already acted. The EU has actually passed the General Data Protection Regulations in 2018, and their rules require that other countries meet their standards in order to do business, to exchange data across borders. And this means that if we want Canadian businesses to continue to have an edge in European markets, we have to modernize our privacy rules. It is absolutely imperative that we move now as aggressively as possible. And for all these reasons, we must pass the Digital Charter Implementation Act. So, Mr. Speaker, what does this bill actually do? First, the bill introduces the new Consumer Privacy Protection Act, which updates the old PPADA Act, which was first passed in 2001. Second, this bill introduces the Personal Information and Data Protection Tribunal Act to create an oversight and enforcement body for the new privacy rules. Third, it retains the measures of Part 2 of PPADA under the new Electronic Documents Act. Now, Mr. Speaker, the measures in this bill are built upon 3 key goals: consumer control, responsible innovation, and strong enforcement and oversight. And let me just touch very briefly on how the measures in the bill meet each of these goals. First, how do we give consumers more control? Bill C-11 modernizes consent rules and requires companies to ask for consent in plain language, which is great. The bill also gives Canadians the right to data mobility. So that means that you could direct one organization to share certain data with another for a specific reason. So, for example, you could direct your bank to share financial information with another bank. Next, it gives Canadians the right to withdraw their consent for the use of their data. So it would let you direct a company to delete whatever personal information they have about you, and this includes on social media platforms. And this would actually give control of personal data back to Canadians. The bill also clarifies that even information that has been de-identified is still personal information. So even if a company removes your name from your data, this bill ensures that that data still belongs to you. It has to be protected, and companies need your consent to be able to use it. And finally, the bill requires transparency for use of algorithms and AI. It would give every Canadian the right to request an explanation of how and why an automated system made a choice or prediction about you. And I'm hoping, Mr. Speaker, that at some point we are allowed to relay what they can and cannot do with that information. So the second goal is enabling responsible innovation. We want our country to stay globally competitive, support innovation, and unlock the potential of data to create incredible value and improve our lives. But we need to support the innovation in a way that guarantees the right to privacy. The bill simplifies consent rules so that companies are not burdened by seeking consent for every use of information, even when consumers reasonably expect it. So this is good for business, and it also helps Canadians make meaningful choices. Rather than being bombarded by consent requests full of legal jargon, consumers will see plain language requests when it really matters. Bill C-11 also allows Canadians the choice to contribute their data for the common good. It allows businesses to share de-identified data with certain public institutions to power social benefits like public health and infrastructure. Lastly, the bill allows businesses to submit their codes of practice to the Office of the Privacy Commissioner to ensure they comply with the law. And this kind of transparency and streamlined regulation is both good for businesses and good for Canadians. And lastly, the third goal is strong enforcement and oversight. With any new regulations, we absolutely need stronger enforcement and oversight. And indeed, I know that is something that the Office of the Privacy Commissioner has long requested. So what does this bill do, Mr. Speaker? It gives the Commissioner that power, including forcing an organization to comply with privacy laws and ordering a company to stop collecting data for personal information. It also creates the Personal Information and Data Protection Tribunal, and the Privacy Commissioner can also ask the tribunal to impose fines. We would have the stiffest penalties in the G7, and for small transactions, that the fine would be 3% of global revenue or $10 million, whichever is greater. And for more serious violations, the penalty is up to 5% of global revenue or $25 million, whichever is greater. Now, Mr. Speaker, I had mentioned to you that this bill addresses many of I had mentioned to you earlier that Davenport residents have been raising this as a concern to me for 5 years now, and I know that I've received a number of letters from them, and so I just want to sort of pay tribute to all of those that have written to me through the years to indicate that this continues to be an issue, and I know that they will be very happy to hear that we are moving forward on this legislation. So I'll conclude, Mr. Speaker. I believe that this bill is the first of many steps our federal government will take to protect Canadians' privacy and harness our country's potential in the digital age. Our current privacy laws were passed in 2001, and in 20 years, the pace of change left those laws badly out of date. We will need to keep doing more to stay on top of rapid changes, both looking at the threats and the opportunities. Davenport residents and indeed all Canadians demand that we continue to do all we can to keep our privacy and data security laws updated in a way that protects them while still enabling data to be used for innovation and economic growth. In 2019, we set out a vision for the Internet and the Digital Charter. That vision is of an internet that serves the public good and guarantees certain rights, like the right to control and consent, the right to transparency and portability, and the use of data for the common good, and the need for strong enforcement accountability. I'm proud that our government has introduced this bill to implement the Digital Charter and guarantee these rights to Canadians. We have seen big new challenges, and we have stepped up with real solutions, and I ask all my colleagues for the speedy passage of this bill.